All right, moving on to the last and final segment of today's show. It's time for the NFL picks. And once again, last week I went 7-9. It wasn't a great week one, but it could have been much worse. There were a couple close games I ended up winning, like the Rams we took. We had the Seahawks, or not the Seahawks. We did have the Seahawks, but besides those two, I don't know, the Lions blew that game who we had the Niners, we had the Buccaneers. So it was a tough week one, but we're going to get it back. Here we go, week two picks. Thursday Night Football, the 0-1 Cincinnati Bengals coming off that heartbreaking loss to the LA Chargers will head to Cleveland to take on the 0-1 Cleveland Browns. And the Browns, once again, for the second straight year, we already talked about it. They underachieved in a season-opening blowout loss. While the Bengals, Burrow was impressive and they battled, but with that in mind, I can't take the Bengals here. If the Browns lose this game, their franchise is in big, big trouble. And when you look at it, the Bengals, they weren't great in their loss to the Chargers, but at least they showed something. The Browns, they were awful in just about every way possible against Baltimore. So to be honest, it wouldn't shock me if Joe Burrow and the Bengals win this game outright. Just because it's the Cleveland Browns, man. They're the Cleveland Browns. We've seen so many terrible things happen, with this organization, as crazy as that sounds. And I don't know, man. I just don't see Cincinnati being able to do much here, though. Myles Garrett needs to have a big game. We'll see how Burrow plays. Once again, he was pretty impressive last week, but this is a Bengal team that outscored the Browns in last year's season series, so maybe they do win, but at the same time, I'm going to take the more talented team. I think Odell Beckham has a good game. I think Nick Chubb has a solid game. Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett, hopefully for them, make enough big plays down the stretch. So I'm going to take the Cleveland Browns in week one to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. Right now, it's Cincinnati +6. I think the Browns cover that. I think it's going to be a close game. I think the Browns win by about 10 points, and it'll be fun to see how Joe Burrow does during his NFL debut. Let's get to the 1 o'clock games. How about the 0-1 San Francisco 49ers heading to MetLife Stadium to take on the 0-1 New York Jets? And the San Francisco 49ers were kind of disappointing last week when they took on the Arizona Cardinals. Their quarterback really did not look good at all, but hopefully when you look at this 49ers schedule the next 2 weeks against the two New York teams, the Jets and Giants, they'll be able, for their sake, to get the job done. And the Jets' offensive line couldn't block the Buffalo Bills' defensive line, right? So why would anything be different here with the 49ers pass rush? Nick Bosa, Ford, Kinlaw. And the Jets' offensive line wasn't great. Sam Darnold was sacked 3 times and regularly just pushed out of the pocket, and the run game, even with Le'Veon Bell, did nothing. Le'Veon Bell is not going to be playing this week, and we know how good the 49ers defensive line is. You don't trust Adam Gase here. I have to take the 49ers to earn the victory over the New York Jets. I want to see Jimmy Garoppolo play well in this game. You guys saw that he almost took out George Kittle, man. That was scary stuff there. But I just think when you look at it, San Francisco is the better team. They're the more talented team. They should be able to beat the New York Jets here. I have San Francisco covering the -7 spread. I'll go 30-16. Moving on to the next game, we'll stay in the AFC East. How about the 1-0 Buffalo Bills taking on the 0-1 Miami Dolphins? Right now, the Bills are a 5.5-point favorite. And it's funny because when you look at this line and you look at this game, I think it's always very tempting to fade a big public favorite like the Buffalo Bills, especially when it's 5.5 against a team that, even though we know they're not great, they're improving. And Buffalo can be very unpredictable, while at least the Dolphins, they're going to have some fans in their home crowd on Sunday. But the Bills last year beat the Dolphins both times. And here's my thing. It may be a little too early to buy in to the Josh Allen hype, especially me. You guys know I'm not that high on him. But there's no denying the Bills are a good all-around team with what looks like an improved quarterback behind center, hopefully for them. So I'm going to take the Bills to win this game. It's -5.5. I think they win by 3. I think Miami covers. Buffalo gets the win. But I'll say this. I would definitely put Buffalo on upset alert this week. I think the Dolphins definitely have a shot of beating them. Hopefully Ryan Fitzpatrick plays a little bit better this game than he did last game. Game number 4. How about the 0-1 Detroit Lions coming off just a heartbreaking loss to the Chicago Bears at home on Sunday, heading to Lambeau Field to take on the 1-0 Green Bay Packers? And there's no real debate here. I have to take the Green Bay Packers. I thought if Detroit would have won last week, even before they blew the big lead, like when they were up 23-6, I was kind of thinking to myself, all right, you guys know I picked the Detroit Lions to make the playoffs before the season started, but that was a really disappointing loss. And the fact that now they have to go into Lambeau Field, one of the toughest places to play, and I haven't even mentioned what Aaron Rodgers was able to do last week. What an unbelievable performance by him. Just a vintage Aaron Rodgers performance, and I'm going to have to take the Packers here, man. Matt Patricia is really not a coach I trust at all. I think when you look at Detroit, they have some pieces, but they also have some major holes. They haven't drafted that well over the last couple of years. And once again, man, it comes down to Matt Patricia. The more and more I look at this Lions team, it's going to be very hard for me to trust him as a head coach that I think could win me games. And when you look at Green Bay, what they did in week one was the polar opposite. Super impressive effort when you look at the Packers. And I think this is right now, Green Bay is -6. I think the mental game also here definitely favors Green Bay, considering how inspired Aaron Rodgers looked while the game-crushing drop from DeAndre Swift could have the Lions kind of bummed out. But it's going to come down to for Detroit. They need Kenny Golladay to play. Right now, he's questionable. And the Packers, over the last couple meetings against the Lions, they've all been close, but they've been able to win. I think they blow them out here. I like Green Bay to cover the -6. I'll say 31-17. Moving on to the next game, we'll stay in the NFC. How about the 1-0 Los Angeles Rams, who earned a divisional victory last week over the Dallas Cowboys? They will head to Lincoln Financial Field to take on the 0-1 Philadelphia Eagles. And the Rams looked better in week one than I expected, and I picked them to win. They played a solid game, I think, on both sides of the ball to break in the new stadium. And then the Eagles were kind of the opposite. They looked very desperate and very bad after they blew a 17-point lead to the Washington football team. The injuries on the offensive line right now are tough, with Dillard and Brooks out, while Lane Johnson may be out as well. Miles Sanders is banged up. Jeffrey, Brandon Graham, Barnett. There are a lot of injuries on this Eagle team. A lot of people are going to take the Rams here, but I just believe in Carson Wentz more than Jared Goff. We know the history that these two quarterbacks have. We remember, I believe, the last time Carson Wentz faced the Rams, he got the job done. And the Eagles have played well against the Rams over the last couple of years. Mostly everyone's going to be on the Rams here. I'm going to take the Eagles. I think Doug Peterson gets the job done. Good coaching matchup here, unlike last week. I'll take Philadelphia to get the win 24-21. Moving on to the next game, we'll do a little AFC-NFC. How about the 0-1 Minnesota Vikings heading to Indianapolis to take on the 0-1 Indianapolis Colts? And right now, Indianapolis is a 3-point favorite, and I think the Colts win this game. It's not an easy game to pick, largely because both teams entered the season with good expectations and fell flat in week one. I just think the Colts are the better team. Even though Kirk Cousins is the better quarterback, the Colts are at home. I think their defense is better, and hopefully, if Phillip Rivers can't light up or do something against this Vikings defense, there's a big problem, because even though Aaron Rodgers was great last week, their secondary was just depleted, and that's a big issue if Minnesota plans on winning more football games. So I'm going to take the Colts here. I think they cover the -3. I'll take it 24-17 Indianapolis to beat Minnesota. I think the Vikings are in trouble, man. That's not a team right now that, if you ask me, are they making the playoffs? I'm going to say no, and I wasn't high on them before the season. Week one kind of just confirmed that. So right now I'm kind of low on Minnesota. How about the 0-1 Carolina Panthers heading to Tampa to take on the 0-1 Buccaneers? And, everyone is kind of taking Tampa Bay here. I think they get the win, and Brady looked kind of close to shot on Sunday. I said it once again. He's won 4 out of his last 10 games, just one of which came by more than 7 points. I understand the Panthers are a work in progress, especially on defense. But can this version of Tom Brady really take advantage of that? With Mike Evans playing less than 100%, Chris Godwin now dealing with a concussion, and Donovan Smith playing through an ankle injury? On one hand, Tampa Bay has a defense filled with playmakers, and they should pose a much larger challenge to Carolina than the Vegas Raiders did last week. But I think Teddy Bridgewater will have a good game here. I'm going to take the Bucs to win outright. I think they cover the -7. I'll go 27-14. Another 1 o'clock game. How about Atlanta at 0-1 heading to Dallas to take on the 0-1 Dallas Cowboys? And the Falcons last week was the least surprising thing I've seen, man. Anyone who thought they were going to win, how'd that end up? They got blown out. And you guys know, I'm not very high on the Dallas Cowboys, but I'm picking the Dallas Cowboys to win this game. Dak Prescott needs to have a big game. I know they're up front, Dallas is kind of banged up. Their defense is very vulnerable. I think Julio Jones could have a big game. But I think when you look at Dallas, they need the game more. And I know Atlanta's 0-1, but even though I don't like either of these teams, but I do think Dallas playing at home, I think Zeke has a big game, and I want to see Dak Prescott come out aggressive as possible. I like Dallas to cover that 4.5. I think they win 27-20 over Atlanta. All right, continuing with our picks, how about a battle between two 1-0 teams, both in the AFC South, as the 1-0 Jacksonville Jaguars will head to Tennessee to take on the 1-0 Tennessee Titans. And I think there are a couple ways you could look at this game. The line right now is Tennessee -9, and I think there are a couple questions. Number one, do you believe in Gardner Minshew? And the vast majority of the public and a lot of other people wasn't too really high on Gardner Minshew's debut, or going into the season, but he played really well. It's impossible to know after one game whether the Jaguars' upset of the Colts was a miracle or a fluke, or if Minshew is going to be that efficient on a consistent basis. But the Titans are coming off an ugly road win, and I don't know, even though I think Tennessee is going to win the game, I think this number is a little too high. The Titans were interesting on Monday night because I was actually impressed with Ryan Tannehill. He played much better than I expected. They're looking pretty banged up right now. Corey Davis is a hamstring injury. Kenny Vaccaro has an illness. Vic Beasley's dealing with a knee. A.J. Brown as well. And Jadeveon Clowney has a hip injury as well. So I think 10 points is a little too much here, but I think Tennessee wins the game. But if Jacksonville could somehow win this game, man, the NFL is going to be flipped upside down because the fact that they won last week was really impressive. Doug Marrone deserves some credit. That was one of the better coaching jobs I've seen. It's very hard to motivate your players like that, especially in the first game of the season. And when you look at it, you remember the Miami Dolphins last year and how when they were tanking early in the season, it didn't even look like they were trying. And I said it on the podcast on Tuesday, players do not tank, just the front office. So I'm going to take the Titans to win behind Derrick Henry. Tennessee, if they could win this game, we'll see what Indianapolis and Baltimore both do with tough matchups this week. But Tennessee, if they could get to 2-0, Indianapolis and Houston or both fall to 0-2, they're looking to be in a pretty solid spot. I like Tennessee to win, but Jacksonville to cover. Moving on, the 0-1 Denver Broncos will head to Pittsburgh to take on the 1-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. And right now, the line is Pittsburgh -7.5. And Denver was the other team in that Monday night game against Tennessee. And they had to travel to play on a short week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it's interesting because the Broncos, I think, need to bounce back here. I don't think Drew Lock was that bad on Monday night against a pretty good Titans defense. And the Steelers present a different challenge because they're very good. And Ben Roethlisberger, it was one thing to face the Giants defense. It's another thing to face the Broncos defense. And Denver's still really banged up after losing Von Miller and, Cortland Sutton, Phillip Lindsay, and A.J. Boye are all banged up. But their offensive backfield is deep. They could get Sutton back and the rookie K.J. Hamler. The Steelers were already without David DeCastro before losing Zach Banner on Monday night. And James Conner, Deontay Johnson, Juju, Al Villanueva, and Steph Wisniewski all missed practice on Wednesday. So already throughout the league, the injury bug is going pretty quickly. And I'm going to take Pittsburgh to win and cover, man. Even though I like what I saw from Denver's offense, I just can't trust Vic Fangio. That dude blew Denver the game on Monday night when he refused to call timeouts. He thought you could bring your timeouts back home with you, and he let Ryan Tannehill and the Titans run off as much time from the clock as possible, even though their kicker wasn't performing. And it's going to be interesting to see how short or how long of a leash Steven Gostkowski is on. But I like Pittsburgh to cover, man. I just love what I'm seeing from this team. It's going to be interesting to see what exactly they plan on doing at running back with Benny Snell now all of a sudden in the mix. So I'll take Pittsburgh to win and cover. I'll go 28-20 Pittsburgh. All right, the other 1 o'clock game. How about the New York Giants at 0-1 heading to Chicago to take on the 1-0 Chicago Bears? The line right now is Chicago -5.5. And when you look at the Giants, they didn't play great on Monday night, but I did like what I did see from the quarterback. Daniel Jones looked very good outside of a few mistakes Monday night against Pittsburgh, and we know how good that defense is. And the Giants have the talent to keep this closer than most people expect. As a matter of fact, I think the Giants have the better quarterback in this matchup. And it's going to be very interesting to see what exactly Mitch Trubisky could do as an encore after he somehow, some way, led the Chicago Bears to a miraculous comeback victory over the Detroit Lions on Sunday. But I think I'm going to take the Bears to win just because of their defense. Daniel Jones is starting his season off against some of the tougher defenses in the league. I mean, honestly, if you ask me straight up, Zach, who are the best three defenses in football? I probably would say Pittsburgh in no order. Pittsburgh, San Francisco, and Chicago. Who are the Giants' first three opponents? Pittsburgh, San Francisco, and Chicago. Not ideal. I think the Bears win at home. And if the Bears, kind of similar to the Titans when we were just talking about, if they could take advantage of this schedule and, get off to 2-0, you look at the Vikings and Lions, who are both already 0-1, maybe they could get something cooking here, and Mitch Trubisky could just hopefully gain as much confidence as possible. I like the Bears to win, but the Giants to cover. Moving on to the next game, we'll get to the 4 o'clocks. How about the 1-0 Washington football team heading to the desert to take on the 1-0 Arizona Cardinals? Right now, the line is Arizona minus 6.5, and I'll give the Washington football team some credit. They pulled off a stunning upset with 27 unanswered points against the Eagles on Sunday. But they're still not really getting that much respect here, and I kind of understand why. Because Kyler Murray is really good. He is so mobile and dynamic, and when you compare that to Carson Wentz, I think Arizona is going to be able to take advantage of stuff that Philadelphia last week could not do. I don't trust Dwayne Haskins Jr. yet. It will be interesting to see if Arizona's offensive line is going to be able to hold up against that fierce Washington defense. We saw what they did to Philadelphia last week. I love Kyler Murray, love DeAndre Hopkins. I'll take Arizona to win and cover by a final score of, I'll go 27-13. Next 4 o'clock game. How about the 1-0 Kansas City Chiefs heading to LA to take on the 1-0 Los Angeles Chargers? And right now the line is at Kansas City minus 8.5. And I'm going to take the Chiefs here to cover and win. Let's not pretend that these two teams are even close to each other. I just think when you're the Chargers and you're showing up to a competition against Patrick Mahomes and the best guy you could bring out is Tyrod Taylor, I don't get that. If I'm the Chargers, I would probably want to start Justin Herbert right now. It's 2020. This dude was a 4-year starter in college, and Tyrod Taylor just isn't getting you anywhere. You have the weapons to help him out with Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler, and I like what the kid Joshua Kelly at running back was able to do last week. Kansas City's just going to put up way too many points on a depleted Chargers defense that really could have easily lost to Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals last week. Kansas City right now, by far and away, looks like the best team in the NFL to me. And we'll see what they do next Monday night at Baltimore. But for now, they have to focus on the Chargers. I think they get the easy dub. Moving on to the next 4 o'clock game. How about the Baltimore Ravens sitting at 1-0, heading to Houston to take on the 0-1 Texans? And right now, Baltimore is a 7-point favorite. And I think this is a little too high of a number. The last time these two teams met, I get it. Baltimore beat them 41-7. The Texans are likely too good to get blasted like that again, especially coming off a loss at home. But I think last week did expose some of Houston's problems. I love Deshaun Watson, and he's great. Without him under center, with him in there, Houston is always alive. But the Texans' problems with those elite teams can't be overlooked here. Both teams are a little banged up. Ronnie Stanley missed practice Wednesday for Baltimore, but so did Titus Howard, Brandon Cooks, Duke Johnson, and J.J. Watt. I'm going to take the Texans to not only cover but win outright here. And I'm not, trusting them to really get the job done. I'm not saying that I'm confident they win, but I think Houston gets the job done here just because next week they go to Pittsburgh. They can't start 0-3. I think they scratch out a win here. Maybe Baltimore overlooks Kansas City a little too much. I'm not sure. But I think Deshaun Watson is going to be motivated to play against Lamar Jackson, a guy that he was very successful against in college. I will take the Texans and Bill O'Brien to pull out a small victory. I will go 24-23 Houston. Sunday Night Football. The New England Patriots will head to Seattle to take on the Seahawks, and New England is a 4-point underdog right now, and with an easy Week 1 win over Miami. The Patriots reminded the football world that they can't completely be counted out, but how much stock do we put into a win over a rebuilding Dolphin squad? Well, let's see what Belichick, Cam Newton, and those guys could do in Seattle, because that's a different animal. I understand there aren't going to be any fans there. But Russell Wilson, the Seahawks are 16-3 straight up with Wilson as their quarterback in primetime home games. That's an absolutely ridiculous number. I believe in Seattle. I think they get the job done here, but I want to see if New England could be competitive. I think they cover. I think Seattle wins 24-21 by a field goal, and it will be cool to see Russell Wilson going up against this defense. And then finally, the New Orleans Saints will head to Vegas to take on the Raiders in their first game at the new Allegiant Stadium. And the Saints have only started 2-0 once in the last 7 seasons. And they generally looked a little shaky on Sunday. Now they'll be without Michael Thomas. But I still think they come out firing here and they beat the Raiders. I mean, actually, you know what? I'll go the double upset. Give me the Raiders here. The Raiders did impress me against Carolina. I did not pick them to win that game. But they did. And going on the road, flying across the country against I don't even care who. That's a good job. And it sucks that there aren't going to be fans there, but it's going to be cool to see what that new stadium is looking like. John Gruden will have his guys fired up. And I just didn't like what I saw from Drew Brees. I told you before the season, I think there's a small chance that he could break down, and that could, ruin everything for the Saints. He didn't look great on Sunday, and that could be a concern. Plus, it'll be interesting to see what they do without Michael Thomas. So I'm going to take the Raiders to actually win this straight up. We'll go with a couple underdogs. Once again, to recap my picks, I will have the Raiders beating the Saints. I will have the Seahawks beating the Patriots. I will have the Texans upsetting the Ravens. I will have the Chiefs beating the Chargers. I will have the Cardinals beating the Washington football team. I will have the Bears beating the Giants. I will have the Steelers beating the Broncos. I will have the Titans beating the Jaguars. I will have the Cowboys beating the Falcons. I'll have the Bucks beating the Panthers. Have the Colts beating the Vikings. Have the Eagles beating the Rams. We got Green Bay, the Packers, beating the Lions. The Bills beating the Dolphins. The Niners beating the Jets. And tonight on Thursday Night Football, the Browns beating the Bengals.